Today is December 12th, 2025, and I'm sitting here with Miss Diane Fisher, an active member of New Light Baptist Church, which is the congregation we are going to discuss today. Before we dive into our questions, how are you feeling, Miss Fisher?
Oh, I'm feeling quite fine, thank you.
Okay.
Holiday season, getting ready to hopefully get some much needed time off.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to start with some opening questions about, your personal background. How long have you been a member of New Light Baptist Church?
Okay, I've been a member, not to tell my age, but I'm going to have to, I guess, since I was 12
Mm.
and I'm 76.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yes. And I probably was one of the last people that Reverend Martin baptized before his passing.
Mm.
Right. So I've been attending that church all my life, you know. So. That's big part of my grandparents were founding members of the church that was a split from Tabernacle. And so that meant my mother and her sibling, they were part of New Light as well.
Mm.
hmm
In what ways have you been involved in the church through the years?
Oh, wow. My first memories, of course, it was Sunday school as a 5-year-old or less. So I've been in Sunday school the majority of my life. Back then, in the Black church, Sunday school was a real event, a real training session for young people. And the expectation is that children went to Sunday school. And so that's really my first beginning of really at 5 years old going to Sunday school, learning the speeches, learning songs as best you could at that time, really getting entrenched in the rituals that Black church really was founded on and it started with the young people in Sunday school.
Okay, okay. The next question I have asks, what first brought you to New Light? But since you said you grew up there, going to rephrase it. What makes
Mhm.
you stay at New Light?
Hmm. I've been in New Light and all these years because it was a church that supported me throughout my life, actually, uh, in a church where I was allowed to grow and mature without judgment, a church that supported me from a from Sunday school to a teenager in youth fellowship to allowing me to take on roles at the church at an early age, being a part of ministries. They were training us to be, and so you kind of just kept doing things that involved you more in church. And so you really became, in a sense, one of the youth individuals that they would depend on. And as I got older, I was given more opportunity from even the financial end, being able to count the mission and education funds. I mean, that was a big thing in my age to be able to count money in the Black church. Wow. Being an announcing clerk, having come up and being able to speak. So for the church, it was such a training for me. Speaking, public speaking, all of those things. Those were opportunities that were given to me at a very early age, young age. And as I continued with my education and being allowed to have more voice, more opportunity within the church, the church also helped subsidize my education, at Wayne State, a little short, and parents were a little short a little couple of times, and the church came through years ago to help because at that time we didn't have a lot of young people going to college. They went to the factory, they were at AT&T, Michigan Bell, there were so many jobs that were plentiful. So there were not that many that were really taking that college route like I did. And so they were very helpful. And it was a family church. Families belong, everybody, grandma, cousins, it was where the family went on Sunday. Um, yeah, it was basically New Light was built on families. And so families were really the genesis and the foundation of the church in the early years.
Okay. You mentioned that your grandparents were the founders of, one of the founding people of New Light. What
Mhm.
stories have been passed down about the founding of New Light that you have heard?
Well, there's also in the church history. First of all, they were split from Tabernacle. With this, we know, and it seemed what I could kind of glean it was a different ideology, a different feeling. I think when we think about people at New Light, I just said they were more family orientated. Even if you look at Tabernacle now, it's a different culture climate. Okay, so now as I got and when I got older, I figured, oh, I see what was going on. These were the workers. These were domesticated people that were working in the factory, people. And then Tabernacle seemed to have a different vibe. And so I think that was maybe one of the reasons they didn't get along. There was a difference in philosophy and culture. And the story I get, and it's part of the history, that the New Light started in a bakery building, and that the women of the church cooked and sold dinners, and they had the urban the preachers came on after that. The name of the very first minister of New Light kind of escapes me right now, but it is part of the church history. You can find out real easy. And then of course, Reverend Anderson Major Martin became the minister at that time. So that's the story. I remember my grandparents were part of the usher board number one, meaning it was the first usher board. And both grandparents were ushers, and I can see that as my mother became, as when we think about church youth in the church, you were on the usher board and you were in the choir. So these are positions that I held as well, going back to church being family, and these are the rituals and the programs and the ministries. It was without saying that you were going to be a part of. It was no question.
Hmm.
Right,
Wow. Um, so tying back to that founding pastor, right? I believe his name was Reverend Dr. H.P. James. I don't know what the HP stands for, but I
right.
remember reading the HP.
Hmm.
Do you know where he came from and what was he like?
No, I really don't know. I might can question my mother, who is 97. She
Hmm.
may have a pretty good answer. She's pretty sharp still. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
That's a
she
blessing.
may have an answer about him. And I don't really know what happened. Again, unfortunately, I gave them the book that may have had that in it. So for the anniversary on Sunday. So I'm not certain, but I do know that the pastor that I was baptized I should say, was Anderson Major Martin, who was a fireball. He was fire and brimstone, and he was probably my height or shorter. Right. But
Man,
he,
yeah.
but he had him, yeah, absolutely. That's where the church really, I believe, that kind of pastor and that kind of preaching and was obviously very accepting in that community because there were three or four churches right there where
Mm.
New Light, yeah, where with 5240, not 5240, was the church on the original church. There were
On
many
Cobb.
churches in there. Cobb, 30th and Cobb is what I'm trying to say. There were a lot of churches around there. So there was like a church for everybody, Saint Cyprian. There was a church. It was a church. So it was a community of churches, and people could kind of figure out where they wanted to go based on who they were.
Yep, it's called the Old West Side, and yeah, you got Hartford and St.
Right.
Stephen. Yep, they all right by
They
each
were
other.
all there, St. Stephen and St. Cyprian.
Yep.
They were all St. Stephen's. They were all there.
Mm.
And it just depended on, you know, who you were and what kind of experience you wanted to have.
Mm. Hmm.
Hmm.
And that leads me to the next question, actually. Tell me what you know about Reverend Dr. Anderson Major Martin. What were services like under Reverend Martin for a person who never get to experience it? How would you describe a service under his leadership? A typical Sunday morning.
Long, as a child, um, long. One of the things that I remember, very, very traditional, very ritual, and all of the things you can think of a black church back in the 50s, 60s, you know. And I remember as a child, you know, people came to church dressed. I mean, you were dressed to come to church. And I remember probably one of the few, if only, spankings I got. was in the vestibule downstairs because the deacons would go on for 40 minutes with the devotion, if more. I mean, that devotion, it took you all, it was definitely talking about praise and worship now. The devotions back then already took you there before everything. And so it was so long as a 5-year-old. And I was unruly and jumping around. My mother took me to the bathroom and beat my hiney, tore my pocket off my dress. And I've been traumatized since. But I'm saying, I tell that story all the time. You tore my pocket. I'm like, but anyway, because I was jumping around and I wouldn't be quiet in the vestibule. But it was a long, it was a service that had all of the expectations, the ushers. It was everything you can think of, the choirs marching, all that whole experience. That's what it was. And we know that I remember, because I was young, but I remember he was a very fire, brimstone preacher. He was all over the place. He was engaging and he would do his speaking. I don't remember, unfortunately, because I was younger. But yes, he really had captivated the audience, the congregation, the choirs, and it was very much a traditional experience with him and his preaching modality.
Mm.
It was very lively.
Mm.
Okay, very lively, very lively.
Do you recall any memorable services or events at the 30th Street location?
I got baptized there. That was a memorable event. It was probably, and again, I say probably one of the last because shortly after that, and I'm almost certain that you always baptize on the first Sunday. And I wanted to track that back to find out when he actually died in the pulpit, right? So what happened, I believe I may have been one of the last people that he actually baptized. When I get the years, I'm almost positive because I remember as a child, wow, if I hadn't joined that Sunday and if I hadn't got baptized, Reverend Martin wouldn't have been able to baptize me. I remember that. But I haven't, I haven't really got through what first Sunday was that? What Sunday did he pass? But I'm almost positive it's just extremely close. So that was a memorable event, my baptism, because the baptizing in that was it was a whole different ritual and it was behind the pulpit, but it was more eye level. It wasn't like it is new light now, elevated. So that was part of it. And the other thing, this is going to be hilarious to you, memorable is riding the Sunday school bus
Mm.
because New Light had a Sunday school bus and went around the neighborhood and actually came to my house, my neighborhood, and to pick up the kids because Sunday school was so important. So they came and got the kids to take them to Sunday school, as you know. And eventually, my house became a huge spot because I had from the neighborhood, Virginia Park, and everybody just, parents didn't come, mine did. My parents were probably one of the very few parents, and there was a deacon, Deacon Hurst. His kids, but all the other kids, because they were our friends, hopped on the bus too. So there were, if you're talking about community outreach, the bus picked up the neighborhood. And even though only really two families, parents went, the other kids were just kids from the neighborhood that joined us and came. So the other memorable thing was the bus ride, but also across the street from New Life was a candy store directly across the street. So the bus would let you off, and then you had to be very careful not that you don't spend your Sunday school money or you'd be in trouble. So you had to have your Sunday school money. You can still have your penny candy money. So those were things that stuck out to me as a kid, a little kid
Mm.
at that point.
Wow. That was a beautiful response.
Was it?
Um, it was, yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to share my screen because I have something I want to show.
Mm-hmm.
So, describe the old building on 30th
Mm-hmm.
Street,
Mm-hmm.
to me, as a person who's never seen it or people who have never seen the interior. What did it look like inside? And what rooms, ministries, or activities filled the space?
Well, again, we were pretty much at my age, we were the kids. So it was mainly Sunday school and those kinds. So that Sunday school was in the lower auditorium. So we were down in the kind of basement thing. If you walked in, that level where the doors are, when you walked in, you were right there getting ready to go inside the main sanctuary. And so that's where we were always waiting while the deacons did this our devotion, getting ready for church. So the Sunday school was downstairs. As far as really, it was, I remember there were a lot of poles. It wasn't that ornate, at that time. I've seen some of this stained glass, I know those windows on the side are actual, they were there, but I'm not clear about that stained glass. I don't know if that was something that came after because there were several other churches. But I remember the pulpit was, of course, right in the front. I don't remember a lot of artifacts and things of grandeur at that point. I don't, and I may be wrong. I can, again, there may be a couple of people I can find out, but most of us, because I'll tell you my age, so you know how old I am, so you know what's happening. A lot of people have passed on, and a lot of people left the church during various times. So I don't know the memory unless we could see something internally. Now, you know it's going to be a movie theater or a playhouse. So I would love to go in, then I probably would jar my memory for 60 years, 60 plus years ago, okay, to remember some of those things. I would love to go in there. I remember the facilities were small, the laboratories were small, tiny. It wasn't a big operation. And so moving forward, that was one of the reasons why Reverend Talley got out of there quickly. It was too small, it was not big enough. And he was I don't want to get ahead of the conversation, but go ahead.
Um, so Reverend Martin had planned to enlarge the church and build a recreational center. A newspaper clipping mentions that. Do you
Mhm.
remember that? And what do you remember about those plans?
I really don't remember those plans. Again, my age, 12 years old, 11, 12, 10, that wouldn't have been something they discussed. Now, if I had been a teenager doing, but I wasn't, I would have had a better understanding because at that point, Sunday school, church, penny candy store. Bus ride to Sunday school with my friends and whatever other activities we had to do. But and that's probably true for sure at that time because adults made decisions. Young people were not in those conversations
Mm.
at that time.
So you touched on Reverend Martin's passing earlier.
Oh yeah, it
If you're,
was something.
yeah, if you were if you're comfortable, were you there or do you remember how the congregation responded?
No, I was not there that Sunday that he passed out, or that I don't know if they knew it happened. But no, I was not there that Sunday because oftentimes the Sunday school bus would take you home. So you see what I'm saying? You had the Sunday school bus. So I wasn't, and I was probably glad I wasn't there. But yes, it was really, I understand, a very hard day. Um, I don't think my mother was there. Uh, it's interesting, but no, I was not there the day that he fell and was, passed at church. Heard about it a lot, but I was not there physically that Sunday. Hmm.
So after Reverend Martin's death, there was a court case involving two pastoral candidates. Um, what happened during that time, and how did the church ultimately select Reverend Talley?
Again, if you remember what I'm going to say, children's had their place, young people had their place. The church was ran by the deacons and the trustees. You would have never known that. Actually, that's the first time I've ever heard that. I didn't know there was a big controversy between two people at my age, because then again, I was 12. They didn't discuss it with me. Um, who were the candidates? Do you know?
I
Yeah,
need to figure out where I'll show it to you after this. I'll show
yeah,
you
I did not know that. I
I
did
think
not
it was
know.
a guy from a pastor from Ohio,
Okay.
Olivet Institutional Baptist,
Really?
and then there was Reverend Talley, who was at the time at Central Baptist.
In Pittsburgh.
Yes. So there was I think the deacons were kind of opposed against each other, and they both chose their candidates, and then there was a whole thing that went on about,
Well,
who
that's
gonna
now
choose.
that kind of helps us understand our DNA, right? I mean, I'm glad you shared that because I said, "Oh, we split from this," but you see, thank you for that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
All I knew was when I got what I know, Reverend Cornell Talley from Pittsburgh, Central Baptist,
hmm
Centennial,
Central. Yeah.
Central Baptist. That's all I knew.
Mm,
He was coming.
mm. Yeah,
Well,
I'll show you that clipping. Yeah,
that was interesting. I didn't know.
yes, it's
Okay.
very
Yeah, I was
interesting.
a young child. Okay. I
Um,
clearly didn't know that stuff.
let's see. So what was Reverend Talley like as a pastor, teacher, and leader?
Wow. Mm. Well, I will say now, looking back, and that's why he's held in such high esteem. First of all, he was a visionary. He knew he had to get that church out of there. He knew we had basically he said, "You have outgrown this." He outgrown, which we had, that was true. And of course, we always said he was a visionary. He knew. And then I think even the fact that there was three or four churches already in this, he saw he needed to move out to give us more space because we really had no parking, the whole bit. It was tight over there. And so he was a visionary leader. Um, he took that big leap. And it was so, now that I look back and with amazement, who even knew that the Christian Science Church was empty over there, not too far? He was smart. He didn't take the church too far out of this community, right? It was right there, as opposed to some things that happen now. People trying to go to the suburbs and the churches in the city. He took us maybe less than 10, maybe 5 or 6, 8 miles away, something like that. Not far, just coming down and come down Grand River and there you are. So that was wise. Uh, picking, and he really stretched our minds about who even knew about a Christian Science church, who even thought about it. And it was a really interesting concept when you look back, because it was nothing traditional Baptist about that entity. Nothing. But it was beautiful. And he liked beauty. He liked high quality. He liked the wow factor. I mean, I'm not saying in a negative way, but the grandeur of New Life says a lot about Cornell Talley. A lot of people wouldn't have selected that back in the 70s. It would have been a more traditional, but he saw the stained glass, I believe. He saw the opportunity. Now, it was made like a movie theater. It had theater seats. You know that, right? And people like, what? What? So to be able to change people's minds, to see his vision coming from 30th and Cobb to what was it? Was it the fifth Christian Science, fourth? Which one was it?
I
Fourth?
forgot which one it was.
Yes. Christian
I think it
Science
was the
Church in the
fourth.
all of that.
Yeah,
And then,
fourth church. Yeah.
oh, that's it. What was it? Was the fourth?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I was right. Somewhat. And to come into that whole different, totally different, talking about out of the box thinking. He invented out of the box thinking. And I would say the leadership of he had, the vision, the out of the box thinking, uh, took us to a whole different place that we probably wouldn't have been ever. And then again, remember that we talked about the different climate culture of people, okay? Having people see something bigger than what they were and not afraid. And so there we go. We had this huge motorcade, of course. Um, but But to think about, not to worry about how you're going to make this a Baptist traditional church, given that it's not. And people just believed the vision and the dream and went with it. I mean, we sat in those seats, but he talked about we're going to have pews, we're going to have, we're going to change this, and we're going like, oh, we are okay. There was no center aisle for weddings and funerals. Like, this is a circle. How are we going to do this? Okay. I remember thinking about that. The choir stand, there was no choir stand. It was like a loft. It was like we had these big choir. Okay, how we, but he was a builder. Just built them, changed it, made the center aisle, bought the pews. And he was such a person that, how are we going to get, well, you can get a pew and it'll be put your name on the pew, and that'll be your pew to the church. People drafted up. If you go now, you see names on the pews, right? That's how we got the pews, and all of the interior was all him. Those colors and all that was Reverend Talley. Now we had women in the church that were seamstress and could make the drapes, the original drapes. Some of them I think are still there. There was reason and intentionality about everything. Okay, and we got them center aisle. Eventually we did the choir stand because the choirs were so big while as they were sitting in the audience. Huge. Because we didn't have a choir stand,
Mm.
you know. It was interesting. Um, Ushers had to figure out how to usher in that place. It was not the typical, now we have the aisles and all those things, but it was in this circle, how do you reinvent yourself? We had the lower auditorium. We still called it lower auditorium. And that was for Sunday school. That's where Sunday school was. And adults had their Sunday school upstairs in the sanctuary. We had an elevator. That was new. Whoa, we have an elevator. Okay. For those individuals that need it. And also, I have to tell you, this is kind of funny. So think about it. How do you get a casket down out of a circle church? There was no elevator. That's right. We had no elevator at first. Reverend Talley got that. So you would have to take down the poles that you walk up the handrails. You'd have every time we had a funeral, we had to take the poles down so they could walk and take the casket down the stairs. That was always shady to me. A lot of strength because you couldn't get a casket up or down unless you took the poles down, the railing down. That went on for years, and finally, Reverend Talley said, "We gotta get an elevator." Yes, yeah, that was wild. That was wild. I always said, "Okay," but they did it. They did it. Yeah. Um, Brides, of course, wanted the center aisle, so that happened. That whole pulpit, that was his design. It was beautiful. All of that, the communion table, all of that, all of what you see was really done during Talley's time.
Well,
Right, right. Hmm.
so the next question I have is what was your personal relationship with him like?
He, it was interesting. I was an announcing clerk, and I did that, but I think our relationship really cemented because I was the person that's, again, they weren't, a little college kid, I've been there all my life. And so it was time, and okay, you had mentors, people saw something in you. The ladies, the church secretary, she ran it like she was a drill sergeant, Miss Thompson. She never sat in the audience. She sat over there where now you there was like aisle right there where the drummer is, and that there was a kind of an aisle there at one time, and he knew where she was. That's where she sat so they could connect, and if there's something but anyway, so there was rules and rituals and expectation, top notch. You did. So anyway, somehow or another, I got, I think the person that had been taking in members at the end of service either went off to college or left town. They said, well, you can do it. I said, me? But okay, that was a big deal. So when people joined church, I was the person that would go, they would sit on the front row, and I was the young person that went up there and got their names, whether they're Christian experience, where they were need to be baptized, whether they had just been sprinkled, because he didn't believe in no sprinkling, you had to do immersion in water, and you found out all these things. And we had a lot of people would join. So our relationship, I got to know him and what he expected. I knew the questions to ask. We were what to ask. So when I came up and announced a person, Wallace Bowie is coming. Wallace Bowie is coming through Christian Experience from da 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 church in Detroit. He would know. Or I would say Wallace Bowie is coming from, he's going to be a candidate for baptism. Then that meant he needed to say a different kind of dialogue to you. If a person came up, because I never tried to, I wasn't the one to throw shade. Reverend Tally Wallace Bowie is coming from such and something Catholic church, bit the church, and he came with, he was sprinkled during his baptism. That was a cue. Oh, well, we believe in, immersion. Are you willing to? So we had that kind of, but he really liked my son. He liked youth and young men, and he really took a liking to my son Jason as the young men that were growing up in the church, encouraging them. There were several, and so he was very encouraging to him as he saw him growing and others. And so, a lot of training. I feel that we don't do as much of it anymore. Was really done through the leaders, the women of the church, the mothers of the church, uh, training in on the usher board gave you a lot of ritual training in church. To be a youth usher was something. There are things even today. Went to church Sunday, and a solo was singing, and one of the ushers said, "You want to go in now?" I said, "No." Because rule number one, if a soloist is singing, no one comes in the church. You wait until the soloist stops singing. You can go in when the choir sings, but not when the soloist is singing. Okay, those are things. And you never go across the pulpit. I don't know why, but there were just certain things you just did not do. And usher board, being on the usher board gave you church ritual and training and precision, as well as any youth group that you were in. It was a training ground to continue the church. Okay.
Um, wow. Yeah, we have something at our church is that there's certain steps that
Mhm.
lead to the pulpit area, and you can't go on those steps. If you're a choir member, you gotta go on the side. And I was like, why is that? Maybe because it's like a sacred area, you can't go
Right,
there.
right,
But yeah, we have kind of those unspoken rules, kind of.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
right. Although people do it, you kind of clutch your purse. But no, out of respect to the soloist, you don't be walking all down in the aisle and she's singing or he's singing. You just wait, and ushers would hold you back. Like
Oh, wow.
they would. You knew that when it did that. Don't you can't do nothing but stand there because they're holding because they're the watchmen for the Lord. And there was that's a whole nother story on that.
Describe okay, but let me give you some context behind this question. So,
Sure.
one of my colleagues, her name is Marcia Philpott.
Hmm.
She explained us she told me a story about her experience going to a New Light service and how these people had the choir members had these beautiful blue robes on and they would march down the aisles and sing Walk in the Light, and she had never seen something like that before. I think she was Kojic or something, but she had never seen it like a service like that. So I want you to describe in as much detail as you can what a typical service was like during his pastorate.
Well, She was absolutely right. And I'm sure she's talking about those beautiful turquoise robes. And when you say walk in the light, the beautiful light, they would actually, on program, not necessarily on a Sunday, they would have a flash, a light. And they would, that was part of it. So they would actually have one of those little candle lights or a flashlight. I forgot which. And they would be singing it. And it would be the young adult choir. Uh, they were renowned. They would be at Ford Auditorium. They were all over the place. And their robes were masterpieces. They were, like I was saying to you, I don't know if we could find some. They're beautiful. I remember the turquoise ones. They were just stunning. And then I remember the ones that had the burgundy and had the half like the monks, the little cover that was white, uh, that looked almost like a pope kind of thing. They had some robes, and they were very new lightish. I mean, they were different, respectful. They were beautiful, and so on second and fourth Sundays when that choir sang, you couldn't get a seat in the church. You if you didn't get there early or if you didn't come to Sunday school, you probably wouldn't have a seat at that point. Second and fourth Sunday, the young adults sang. And with Harold Smith and Charles Nix at the organ and Harold Smith directing, it was an event. It was an event. Reverend Talley, I think I mentioned it to you before, uh, tricked us into coming at 10 o'clock for church because he felt that across the street, Ebenezer, if we came at the same time, there'd be no place to park. Untrue. Well, we did come at 10. Our services were they were really at 10, and we weren't out until about 2 o'clock. Seriously. Between the singing, which was wonderful, the spirit-filled services, and don't forget we had so many choirs. So there might be two singing at one time, and they had to have their A and B, and you had your A and B. So we had a lot of music. The announcements were completely thorough because there was always the announcing clerk was a very, shall we say, a very prestigious or a very critical position in the church. So there was a lot of announcements because there were so many things going on. And this was before the monitors. And we did have bulletins that were very lengthy and beautiful and eloquently done, beautifully done, old English script, all that. And so there was a lot of parts to the program, to the Sunday service. But one of the most beautiful parts that set the tone was the Lord's Prayer. And that's when used to sing the traditional Lord's Prayer that took about 5 minutes. And the choir would come up from the center aisle. And sometimes they would line up and they would sing the Lord's Prayer in the aisles and then go to the choir stand. It was magnificent. And so all of this was setting the tone and setting the mood and setting what was about to come. Okay. And then, of course, you had your typical congregational hymns. And then Reverend Talley, who was an Old Testament minister. Okay, that was, of course, he came from Morehouse. He was a Morehouse man. And so he believed heavily in making certain he knew his people, knew his clientele. And so he was a teacher and a storyteller. In other words, whatever he was preaching, he always gave us the sits and labor. He gave us the background first. So we would have like a half an hour of what was happening to this, why this was being done and said in the people and time. Then he would give you the sermon. Now, it took a lot of time, but I will say from him, a lot of teaching and learning was happening from a theological position, if you had a mind. And his sermons were extremely rich. They were well thought out, but they had the common touch. They could Kids could still understand it. but he spent a lot of time explaining what was happening at the time, the people, what caused these things, what happened, and then he would go to the scripture and then bring it relevant to who and where we are now. So he was a teacher as well. hmm He was a theologian. He was. Yeah. hmm
So you're telling me that every single one of those pews in that picture was filled with people?
Every single one of, and watch this. On certain Sundays, if you went to the aisle, there'd be chairs in the aisle, not these aisles, the aisles on the side. And there would be times when the fire department said, "Come on, y'all. This is a hazard in here." As a matter of fact, when Reverend Talley passed, they had to almost shut it down because the fire marshal was off the chain because it was just people everywhere. But on certain Sundays, Easter, Mother's Day, there would be pews and seats all along the side, and like the area in the back, all those that back section, pews, the back section, there would be chairs where people would sit, folding chairs that would put there. There'd be chairs everywhere. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I guess another question I have about the services, did people shout and do like,
Did they? Did they shout and run down the aisles? Yes, all of that. The choir, the choir, the choir would sing and they'd be passed out. They tear up themselves. Yes. So the choir would sing and Harold would be directing and Harold would go and they would go. Oh, it was an event. It was, but the music was magnificent. The playing with the piano, we have the grand pianos, the Steinways. We have, well, you said we have Steinways up and down. Okay. And of course, the Hammond. And, Charles Nix was a master on the Hammond organ. And so we had it all. hmm
and this
And
is
the
just out of,
pipe organ too.
oh, okay.
Mhm.
This is just out of curiosity. There's no VHS tapes of this, no CDs or anything. I feel like something like that needs to be preserved, those services. Somebody has to have something. It has to be some sort of recording.
Well,
Or pictures.
we did have recordings. I have to talk to some people that have left and gone to other churches. I'm trying to think. I would have hoped that in that vault, in that office, there is things that didn't get destroyed because they were in the vault where records were. I would hope that there was something. I know some of the choirs, recordings, they did record, you've heard them. Some of Reverend Talley's sermons, probably maybe on tape, the little cassette or VA. We'd have to see because he had some magnificent sermons that, test the one that I always think about is that I just love from him was the eagle stirreth the nest. That was one. And his sermon about Jezebel. I mean, I just remember as a kid, like, ooh, that was vivid. And, he was a
So he
story.
kind of echoed C.L. Franklin, because C.L. Franklin also did the Eagle Stirs Her Nest. Yeah. Hmm.
hmm I would have liked to see the how they did it, the difference between, how they. But again, most New Light people didn't visit other churches. You know that
Mhm.
they didn't, and so what would happen now? Choir members they would, but the church members, very seldom did they visit other church. Now, we went with the pastor or we had to go somewhere, but most of who we were and what we did was right there in the church. Um, So there wasn't a lot of visiting. They weren't a lot of visiting of the places you belong in New Light at 5240 on Sunday. You had a whole bunch to do. Reverend Talley was also first Sunday, back communion. You had to come back because communion was not in the morning, it was in the evening. So you would be at church on the first Sunday, do what you do, Sunday school, blah, blah, go home. and come back at, I forgot what time it was, for communion. It was a whole nother service on the first Sunday.
So there was a morning and an evening, or just the evening?
It was on the first Sunday there was a second service for communion. Now the dual services came later, with Reverend Baker. They tried that for a while. People wanted two services for working, people working. hmm But not with Reverend. We didn't, I don't think we had two services with Reverend Talley. No, because no one would have, yeah, he was it. I don't think so. It came later.
What were some of the most memorable moments under his leadership?
Hmm. I think under his leadership, there was always the desire to, one of the things that he wanted, the church there was a church in Africa, a school in Africa, uh, that they wanted, that we supported. Uh, the things that were important to him uh, was youth and youth ministries, because youth fellowship, youth ministries started coming out, very pronounced at that time. Activities for youth in the church and making certain the right people were leading those. Or now if I look back in retrospect, he was very intentional about the individuals he had placed wherever he had them placed. The deacon board was huge, the trustees big, so we had the joint board that kind of ran the operation. Women, they weren't women trustees. It was definitely a male dominated, but it was okay because at the end of the day, the women were really running it with making certain things were done, the ministries that were not deacons and trustees, and they were their wives anyway. Okay, so it worked. The various ministries evolved that women pretty much led the ministries. Okay. The only one that I don't think they led for until my mother later was the usher board. Usher board was the male bastion. They they ran the usher like almost like it was very precise. It was beautiful. I mean, really, as far as how it was done. And the kids learned. That's why I learned these people were very serious about training young people. They had high expectations. Who are you? You dressing appropriately, helping you get it together, helping you, you know, keep the the tradition alive. People helped others. Women helped young girls, become young women, and you had opportunities. So you had a lot of mentoring of youth, overtly and covertly. Okay, the job got done. hmm
So that leads to my other question.
Sure.
Who were the key women who kept the ministries of New Light running?
Okay. The type of ministries they led or names or what, if I can remember. I hate.
Both. It can be both.
hmm I remember that Miss, I believe, and I hate to, I don't want to make a mistake, but there were people that were over oh God, I lost the name of it. And like the Improvement Club. Oh my goodness. The Improvement Club, and I believe it was Sister Lottie Talbot, but I don't want to say that. I don't want to somebody says that wasn't her name. But the entities or the ministries that were really say fundraising and in church improvement, the Improvement Club. Uh, there was a group that made certain the pastor and his family were taken care of. They were called the Tally Boosters. They really made certain that the needs of the pastor and his family were taken care of. The Improvement Club. There was of course, the youth ministry, which was huge. Women. So all of these are females, all right? The youth ministry, um, the young matrons ministry, young women, the young adult women, helping them, um, uh, mentoring them. grooming them to be leaders, pass off. You did a lot of training so you could pick up this mantle. Um, we had the there was I was thinking of the brighter future through education. So there was an educational ministry that may have come a little later than did it start with Reverend Talley? It may have started with Reverend Baker, but we always had a youth component. It was a big between Sunday school and uh, the youth ministry. So that was the youth we had. Let me turn the corner. Um, there was some school improvement club. The choirs were huge. There were women. Uh, the choir, the choirs were big. From the youth choir to all the ones. They had a choir for every age group, and they were really excellent. Um, Ministers of music were basically men. They were the ministers of music, and they took care of all of that. Now, women ran a youth choir. They would be running the youth choir. That was a whole different thing, but they took care of the youth choir. Um, we had different uh, fundraising events. Um, so each ministry at our church, there would be the fifth Sunday report. So all the ministries, and there were enough of them, would come down and make a report to the church of what they had raised or any fundraising or support they were to give to the church. So that was a funding stream for the church, and it was the fifth Sunday report. So you know how often you have a fifth Sunday. So ministries would do their little whatever they did, cook dinners, sow fish, um, whatever they did. A tea, oh Lord, there were so many teas, teas, and or they would go on a one-day trip to Frankenmuth, all that. So ministries would have fundraisers. And when they raised funds, then so much would be given to the church on Fifth Sunday. And so you wanted to make certain your group did their part because you, as the president, went down and the improvement club is giving. We want to thank everybody for that one for the tea that we had or whatever they had, and we're able to report to the church 400, $500 or two, whatever it was, you know. And that helped with keeping the church going because people weren't making a lot of money and they weren't giving, they weren't, tithing. You talked about it, but I'm sure that, so that was another way that people could contribute, but not necessarily be honing in on the tithing thing. But that's how you gave. You sold patron tickets for whatever, and the patron's name in the booklet, souvenir booklet. So, that's how churches at that time were able to do many of the things they were able to do on the ministries. Mhm.
And that's good because you answered the other question I had. How did women shape outreach, auxiliaries, clubs, and social service
Right,
within the
right.
community? You
The
answered that.
typical things, giving up the clothes giveaways, young mothers, people came to the church and you saw there was a need. It's usually the deaconess or people would say, oh, they need, we go and talk to them and we had a clothes closet. We would make certain they were taken care of. If they need, whatever the need may have been presented to us at the time. And then, of course, the traditional as time went on with the different giveaways, Christmas for the kids, uh, neighborhood kids, because we had kids in the neighborhood at that time. Even though they didn't necessarily, we were there. They come to Sunday school. Again, kids would come in from the community because there were kids that lived around us, and they would be a part of our church family. We may not see their parents, but we got them. Yeah.
Before I move on to the last question about women, are there any women whose names deserve to be lifted up and remembered?
I would say, hmm, mhm. I think of two. And why am I drawing a blank? I see them. I mean, they're, oh, wow. I think of about three. I may have to call you back on those.
Okay.
Uh, One was our church historian, impeccably dressed. She was a counselor in the school district, very, so precise. Beth Sims was her name. And I'm trying to think, she probably was maybe a trustee. So I believe she, as time went on, she became a trustee. Very beautiful, impeccably dressed. People dressed at New Light, right? And so she was very close with Reverend Talley, making, working many of the things. Um, Martha Davis. I have to get another person. And she got me, she's the person, I'm some John Blank. I know her daughter and her granddaughter. Um, not Martha. I got to get her name. Who she was on the finance. She was on we had a mission and education fund that was deep pocket. People would give, we had two parts building, we had the tithes and offering, and we had the mission and education fund. Well, the mission and education fund was utilized for sick, shut in, and mission work people that were the sick and shut in. And then education, like in my case. Um, and so she was integral in, as time went on, having activities and trips. We had a lot of trips. And it was a great time for people to, Christian people and social people, um, uh, to come together. Rent, the big bus, you go to Chicago, go shopping, or you go up to Frankenmuth. So there was a lot of, and sometimes they went to some other places too. I remember one time they went to see Tina Turner. I was like, okay, oh yeah, they would do some things. Uh, Emma Creighton. Emma Creighton, that's her name. She was a great fun person, and kind of got people doing more social and get the bus, and we're gonna sell. These were all fundraisers. So there were people like Deaconess that really did a lot of work in those days. I remember Miss Lottie Talbert. I think she was over the Improvement Club, which was a big club that raised a lot of money. Um, we think about people like, my own mother, Mary Glenn, that was I told you originally her parents were founding members of the church, and they were the first usher board. Well, I believe she was probably the first, as time went on, the first female usher board number one president. She took it very seriously because heretofore it was basically men that were presidents of usher boards. Okay. So that was, she loved that position. They took it very seriously. Um, I don't want to get in trouble. So these were like the people, uh, my first Sunday school teacher, you know. And I have to, and then I see her face and I know her name, but I'm calling it out. Because she was the very first Sunday school teacher I had. And the training that I got from her really was the catalyst of who I am and how long I was able, the understanding church. So Sunday school was important, your first Sunday school teacher, and she was there forever. And I think that those were individual people, but I got to get her name. I can't, I'm trying to think. Yes, I know her name, but I would love, if you're going to put a name, you'd have to put her name in there because she was at a time where the Sunday school, a lot of kids went to Sunday school class, but she ruled it, and she, went through the songs that you had to sing, taught us. We didn't half know what we were singing, but she made us sing them anyway. And but these are songs that I truly remember from the time with her. Yeah. So yeah, there are quite a few. Not that's just a few. Um, and I don't want to get in trouble, But then I'm probably one of the oldest people left, so they probably wouldn't matter too much, maybe. But there were some wonderful women. Um, like I said, his secretary, Miss Thompson, Ernestine Thompson. She took care, she made sure that church ran well. Everybody was on point because of her. Right. Ernestine Thompson. I'll have to think about my Sunday school teacher. Her name, yep, it's coming. It'll come back in a moment. But yeah, but I'm trying to think. Um, are we talking about at any point in time or back in the day?
Any point.
I would say Diane Embry. Diane Embry was pivotal in the youth choir with the young ones. I said the older people were with, but almost even my own children, Miss Embry was, and the choir, they went places. She made them, I think she might have been a little frustrated because she never got to really direct one of the older choirs, but I'm just saying, but she did a fabulous job because that was, again, Sunday school, usher board, choir. That's what you did. Youth fellowship. That was your world. That was your world. Hmm.
Uh, I got a couple other questions too, so let me know if I'm asking too many or if I'm going too slow. I don't want to take up your whole night. Um, Tell me about the gospel music legacy of New Light.
Wow. Hmm. The legacy is so renowned. I mean, even now, when you mention New Light, the first thing you think of is the choir, the music. People say it all the time. I see the recordings. They're thinking out the box, going down. Who goes down to Ford Auditorium? What black church choir goes down to Ford Auditorium and gives a concert? Okay, who does that? And now this one concert is that at the church, young adult choir.
No, that's Ford Auditorium in
That's the
1960.
Ford Auditorium. But the thing that you would have to, the thing that I will always remember when they came up out of the pit, the choir was down in the pit. You couldn't see them, right? And then they started singing and they came up through the pit of the auditorium. Oh my God. That was magnificent. It was beautiful. Who did that? Charles Nix, Harold Smith. That was a thing. It was wonderful. I mean, people came from everywhere. Like I said, on second and fourth Sunday, you could not get in that church. Seriously. You couldn't park. Well, since we were there at 10 o'clock, we were already parked. But or Sunday school, you had to be there. Seriously. The Sunday school was huge. So you had to be in Sunday school to get a park. You see what the parking is like around there. And this was before we even got the little lots and before that back was done like that. You were all up and down Chicago and Grand River. Oh yeah, oh yes, you had to park and walk. Seriously. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've heard that from some other people commenting about the Ebenezer New Light parking situation. So I've heard of that. But
Well, I say we got duped because we didn't get out any earlier. We were just there longer. We didn't get out at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
mm, wow.
No, about, yeah, 2:30 is close to
So that middle album right there, New Light Sings, it
3.
mentions a 125 voice choir on the back of it. Um, Where did the choir usually travel to and sing? Do you remember?
I would rather I know choir members still. I would defer to them.
Okay.
I know there's a person, if you really want to delve into that, I could talk to Aaron Lewis. He's one of the original, he was part of that crew. I was a little younger. See, I was a tad bit younger for this group. They were older than I, and they were very exclusive about who could be in there. And I imagine there might have been some reasons why. However, but I know people who were a part of that time. I don't know if you were interested in talking to them. Your papers do Monday or whatever, but if you want, when you get into the documentary, I mean, there are people there probably. Have you talked to any choir members?
No, I have not. No.
Well, I have a good one that would be an excellent one
Okay.
for you to get more in-depth knowledge about that. I'm confident they traveled. I don't know where. I think one time they went out of state. They went to I don't Bahamas. They've been places. Again, they were a little older than I, and I was, when you're that age, 3 years can make a huge difference. You stay with the Sunday school choir or the Allegro Youth Choir. This was the young adult choir. So I was one group below, you know, with that. But they were much sought after. That sound, the directors were just the tonality, the control, the one flip finger, and you just silent, and it's just like whoa. And having all song parts. I mean, you could just hear the harmony, hear the blending. You could hear it was magnificent. Plus, not to mention the organ and the Steinway. And you had the best of the best uh, at that time. Yep.
Do you think that the music shaped outreach for the church, or the
Mhm.
community in some way?
I would say the music did that. I think it was a combination, actually, Reverend Talley and the music. So would it have happened without the music? Probably. But it was so much better with the combo. The music set the stage for the preaching, right? It brought people in to receive the word, and then people joined. So it was a full circle. It was a combination. If he had been not a theologian and a scholar that knew how to bring the message to even the masses, no matter how young, he would have had the music. But to have the music and the word and an understanding is probably rare even today, you know. But it worked. It did work. Yeah. Hmm.
In its heyday, would you say the New Light was a mega church?
Yes, without a doubt. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, that's why we had to leave 30th and Cobb. It was too small. And going there, I don't know, I wasn't too versed on Ebenezer, but I don't know what the square footage and the difference is. But, we had the lower auditorium too. So we were filled all the time. I mean, honestly, we probably could have had a different structure and a different uh, uh, edifice and would have probably been served us better because at one time we were kind of, again, the Sunday schools were in sections in the auditorium, in the sanctuary. So you had three or four Sunday school classes. Over here is one in the back is the adults, and then the children were downstairs, and we were doing the same thing. Although we did have a nursery, but you over in this was I know my space, and so Miss had her space over there, and you know, we didn't have separate rooms.
Wow, wow, wow.
We could have had more space, really, honestly, at one time. But that was that was it at that time. We were because don't forget, I don't think no, Tabernacle had we were the first pull out of that little community, I believe, right? I don't know if Hartford had left yet. If Hartford had gotten over here on 7 Mile, I don't know.
I'm trying to
We might have
think.
been the first one to pull out of there.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying to
We might have been because, yeah, when you think about it, when you look at it, we might have been the first to move and then Hartford, or was Hartford first and then we moved. I don't know. Can't remember. I want to think we moved first, oh, but
Yeah,
very
I think
close.
that I think that you all did for sure move first, and then I know Tabernacle was like the last to move because they didn't go to where they were until 2005.
Oh, no, no. We had been there since what's 1970. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
I think wow, I think you all were the first. And
Hmm.
like tying back into the 60s and 70s, what were the major outreach programs? Like what were the major outreach programs of New Light during the 1960s and 1970s that you can remember?
Hmm. I would say the outreach programs, as far as the community outreach programs, because some of the other programs, the more formalized programs, came later. I would say, thinking about it, the outreach programs were really bringing children, bringing people to the church. Because I said the bus brought them. They didn't bring, so in other words, giving religious training to young people that would not have gotten it, whose parents were not either able or willing to bring them. I think that was one of our outreach, a la the Sunday school bus. Now, once as far as giving out to the community in a big, you know, people at that time were very proud. You didn't, you kind of, if you knew somebody that needed help, you kind of gave them a piece. As Reverend would give them some money. If somebody was had a fire or something, you would do it. But it wasn't like now, you know. But it did come later. Now, if we talk about later pastors and what we did when communities became, because don't forget, I think at that time, families and community took care of each other, right? So your somebody took care of you, and it wasn't because you know, yeah, I think that was it. It was later that we needed more of outreach of supporting folks. Now, if somebody had a fire, somebody had a little piece of money, somebody lost their, oh yeah, yeah, they would come and like that. But wide outreach, huge programs, open door came later. We had them, but that were later. We were a family church, so if you had a problem, your family took care of you, right? And in the community,
And that
you help people out to help them like that, right?
you said what?
I said you kind of helped within, and it was a quiet, private thing at that time.
Um, and so you kind of answered the next question. How did the church meet the everyday needs of its neighborhood? So it was through the bus ministry, basically.
And the kids that came from the community, from the that walked in the neighborhood to come to the community. For example, if a child needed something, like say the robes and all that stuff, if they didn't have it, you would never know who didn't have it because everybody would chip in and make certain they had those things. Children weren't anything that any other child did, all children would go. There would be money, nobody would say anything, or there wouldn't be any big brouhaha. And so, but it was mainly focused on the youth and internal. It became more outreach later. You know what I'm saying? As needs became huge. I'm trying to think. I remember when people were laid off and things like that. I'm thinking like my father was laid off, but I think families kind of helped families members when they were having it. It wasn't so much the church, but then in some church, well, our church in particular, but some would, you just wouldn't hear about it. People didn't put people out there like
It
that.
was like an under the table type of thing.
Under the table, quiet, you go talk to the preacher, you talk to trustee, you never knew. So there was probably a lot going, but you just never know because it wasn't shared like that. It was personal and private. Mm.
So at one point, New Light had 20 excuse me. At one point, New Light had 32 auxiliaries and clubs. Which ones
Mm.
stand out to you in your memory?
Hmm. Do you have a list of the 32?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just a newspaper article mentions it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the ones that I mentioned, the Improvement Club, they were always doing wonderful things. Um, the I believe they probably called the choirs ministries at that time. I believe because they were so active and they were fundraisers as well. Uh, the ministries that, again, Sunday school and youth, they were like the foundation. Uh, the what was Miss Creighton's name? Improvement. Um, I wonder if they called the trustee, the board, and the board of deacons and the deaconess. Those were all ministries. Um, Choirs. I'm trying to remember. Again, my book is gone. I'm loaned it out. But I would say if you think about the number of ministries, there was a reason behind every one of them. And because one of the things that I think we really you needed to belong to something. People weren't just out there being a bench member. If you had children, then they were in Sunday school. And then Miss Embry and them, if you need a ride to come to choir rehearsal, we're going to send the bus to get you. See, all of these things. So in other words, and you making me remember that, if people couldn't make the Sunday school bus would go get the kids to come to choir rehearsal. Okay. So this is, you made certain these kids, even though their parents may not could have had transportation or they couldn't come, the kids got there anyway, along with the Sunday school and to events and activities. There were many times it's like at school. You don't know who the parents and the kids. You take them. We went to retreats with them. We took them camping. Uh, we did a lot of things with young people. You know, Edgewater Park back in the day, and then of course, where did they folks go? The kids go now in Ohio.
Oh,
Uh,
Cedar Point.
Cedar Point, all of those things. We that's how we just took our kids. Whether I don't know, now that I'm thinking about it, do we have parental permission? I don't think we did. We just like, okay, get on the bus, let's go. But anyway, yeah. So basically, the ministries that stand out, the ones that dealt with the youth and the developmental. Um, and the development of our church and our church members. The youth, the choir, and the adult ministries that were focused on supporting the church, improving the church, fundraising for the church. So those are kind of the buckets that we had for those the ministries. You kind of fit in a bucket somewhere. Yeah, yeah.
So New Light had a nursing home with medical
Mhm.
services.
Right.
What do you remember about it and what services did it offer?
Okay, so it was more like a convalescent home, nursing home. It was more of a nursing home. Um, I remember this is another thought of Reverend Talley as a generator of funding for the church. This was all his, as he's the leader visionary. And he came up with that, using that property over there to do that, and it happened. Um, it was on a struggle bus in the beginning, but it eventually opened and serviced people. One of the things we used to do, we would actually, our deacons and trustees would go over there and have service with folks. Um, and children would go and you do singing and all those kinds of things. And occasionally the individuals that could come would come. So we had a relationship with them in those early years. So we supported them with with some of the needs they had, but also with the spiritual opportunities. This is before, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Facebook, you actually went over there and they actually had service over there every Sunday with the individuals in the convalescent home and in the nursing home every Sunday. hmm For years. It was certain deacons' responsibility. They had tasks and duties, and they would go there and meet with those individuals and have service for them. And also probably the employees as well that were there.
So you mentioned this earlier. I read the New Light had a mission school or clinic that was in Africa. What do you know about this ministry?
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm forgetting whose brainchild that was. Again, I am not certain. I know we sent money. I don't remember if who went and visited. There wasn't, this was a different time. Of course, now we would have had an exchange. We would have sent folks. So not sure, but I know we that Mission and Education Fund was designated, and I believe it was called New Light Church. I don't want to put out misinformation. I mean, I'm trying to think, um, but that was a testament to our mission, and so that was part of our mission, this church in Africa. I don't know whoever went there. I don't know who actually visited. I could probably ask some questions if you wanted to know more about it. hmm
And I have all the newspaper clippings and stuff that I'm referring to.
Okay.
If you would like,
Mm.
I could give that to the church for you all to have for your anniversary. If you would,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Um, so
So
what's
you actually have that album?
yeah, that's my I own that. Yeah, the album I own.
Okay.
The,
So
the
what was
vinyl
on it?
the vinyl record I own. I think there's 6 songs. That's one side of it. I
hmm
have to look at it again. It's in my room.
Sure.
But the
Uh,
Young Adult Choir Ford Auditorium, I don't have that. But the newspaper clipping to the right, that's digital. I can give you that. And that's about
Oh,
the Young Adult Choir, I think, at Prince Hall.
okay.
But
Oh.
I have a lot more I can give you all to use for your historical records. And of course, this interview, if you want the file for that, for your records,
Mhm.
y'all can have that as
Yeah,
well.
I'm gonna have to talk to my friend who's still around, who was a big part of the choir. You could almost do a whole thesis on that. There are people that are still, maybe you will, maybe you have, I don't know.
I mean,
But I don't
it's my this is not only for my assignment, but it's for my personal oral history project. So if you have people, yes, I would love to interview with them and sit down with them just like how I'm doing with you to
yeah.
record this record because I have not heard a lot of this that you're telling me. Like I'm learning a lot, and I have a lot of questions still. So I'm trying to not ask you all of them. But the next one is okay, what social service initiatives existed in later pastorates? Later pastor uh leadership. So
Okay.
beyond Tally.
Okay, so we had under her name was oh golly. We had a food program. There's, the bank on the corner was part of our business, part of our church, right? And we received, there was a time when, and I'll have to get her name, golly, I just mentioned her name, who ran a food operation out of the bank. I think we had matching funds with a government entity at the time where we paid so much and we could buy, half and half, and then we were able to have funds for the community. And that was a wonderful program that lasted many years where people could actually come and get food from our annex. It was called the annex before, and which was a bank, which was really a nice facility too. That's where we had clothes, giveaways, et cetera, et cetera. But we did food on a regular basis to families in need. They would come and get food. And also, in some cases, it would be delivered to families that we had the lists and the names of families that needed support. hmm So that was a big program, and that was pretty much under Reverend Baker. Yeah, so That was an extra, and there was a during those years. So that was a really a big program, and it ran for a regular amount of time. So that was our community outreach and feeding people in the community. And then along with that, if they needed clothes, they could get food and clothes out of the annex. No questions, just come whoever so will. And if we knew who they were and they couldn't come, people would deliver food to them.
Um, so you feel as though New Light serves both the spiritual and material needs of the community.
I would say, and I'm thinking about turkey giveaways. I'm thinking about school supplies, going back to school. Even now, we started that with Reverend Baker. We've been doing that through Reverend Brown, and even now, uh, Thanksgiving turkey meals, back all of that. Christmas, we did some phenomenal Christmas gifts. People would dress up as Santa and the community kids. So I think, um, and really nice, very, very, very nice toys and activities would be given to kids, bikes and et cetera. So we have done a lot of outreach, whether it was food, clothing, or in case of children bringing joy to children. Mhm. Also, I should add scholarships, money for going to our high school graduates would get stipend and money. We'd have a formal program. So we would also support children. We would recognize kids at every level, but elementary going to middle, middle going to high. But those kids going to college, we would give them scholarships as well through the Brighter Future through Education Ministry. And that was started under Reverend Baker.
Did New Light play any role during the civil rights movement?
Oh, that would be Reverend Talley. He, I believe he knew Reverend Martin Luther King. Um, I think there was a little question about the Vietnam War. They didn't see eye to eye on that discussion. But he was because he was we were very tuned in to civil rights with him. Remember, I know you don't remember when the church was bombed, with the Sunday school, where the kids went in Sunday school. That was in
Uh,
the
uh,
girl,
16th Street Baptist, yep, in Alabama,
16th
yeah,
Street. We were in
Birmingham.
church. Yeah, we were in church. I was in church that Sunday. Reverend Talley came in. What was that, 19?
It's probably 63.
Yes.
I
And
think it was, yeah.
so we were in church, and Reverend Talley came in. And he knew about it. He heard it. I don't know, whatever. And he was so pale and he said what happened at this church with these young girls. And he told us he dismissed church and said, just go home. And so and then of course, the march that we had in Detroit, he knew these people. He knew um, Reverend Franklin, he knew these people. But so but we weren't like maybe as involved as some like you think about um, some of the churches, but we did send money. We would take up collections and we would do what uh what he wanted us to do in many of these situations that occurred. Um yeah, he was tuned in. Um but as far as really other, I would say he made us aware. It was discussed. We supported it. Collections would be taken up and provided financial support for various entities um, that moved the civil rights. But I'm trying to remember, I don't remember anyone coming. in speaking. I may be wrong, but again, because I was young, that may have escaped me a little bit. Hmm.
Uh, which which church is the New Light Fellowship with regularly?
Did they fellowship with regularly? I would say Hartford. Hartford, um, I would say more Hartford than probably, how pastors would have, you come to my anniversary, I go to yours, but actually fellowshipping with a relationship, I would say Hartford. It was interesting. Not a lot of pulpit sharing, not a lot of in any of the pastors going back and forth. But they were interesting, you know. But Hartford would be the one because much of what our some of our members when they were very close to them. It's almost like, okay, you're over at Hartford, so we do a lot of things together. And I know our last minister was close with Reverend Christian Adams. So we did things with them. But really, other than high holidays or anniversaries of pastors, we didn't do a lot of, uh, shall we say, going to other churches or them coming to us. Uh, very, just few, just maybe church anniversary, like those kind of day, pastor. So maybe twice a year, somebody may show up, come, because we would go, but it wasn't. You kind of stayed very close to. Didn't do a lot of pulpit sharing. That's all I can say. They didn't.
That's interesting. That's
It
not
is.
that wasn't the case for like me growing up, in
I
church.
know it wasn't.
It's just like we fellowship frequently with different churches and stuff. Our choir would sing at their anniversary, and
Right.
yeah, it was yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't that. Now we may do the choir may get to an anniversary, especially them, the choir we're talking about. But there wasn't a lot of CL Franklin. We'd go over to CL, we go to Reverend Frank. I can tell you, we went to Franklin, we went to him, we would go to Adams. Um, Reverend Sampson Tabernacle, there was a relationship with him. So, and I'm thinking, those come to mind, maybe Dexter Avenue, but it was not a lot. And it was, again, the reciprocity, my anniversary, your anniversary, church anniversary, we asked me to speak. So it wasn't like a regular list. So in your church, is it like you fellowship with the same churches back and forth? No. I know some people do that, but no.
Oh.
It's just on high holidays, like every fourth Sunday or for every other month, you may go to the same church kind of thing.
Well, no, it would just be mainly anniversaries and
Yeah,
pastors' anniversaries, church anniversaries,
yeah, yeah. Okay, it's the
ushers'
same.
anniversaries, stuff like that. That's what I mean by it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same.
Okay.
Those kind of high holy holidays, church pastors' anniversary. I know the usher board, they have a crew, they'd have a group, and they would, they were things that ushers did at other churches, supported each other. So it depended on the ministries. And now that I'm thinking about probably ministries that of like kind supported ministries at other churches of like focus. Right. Yeah. So that's how it was done. So I would say, yeah, we had a fair amount then, if we put it that way.
Out of curiosity, when it comes to, I'm just curious because since we talk about anniversaries, churches serve food and stuff after anniversaries. Were there any memorable meals or like dishes that you can think of eating at New Light?
I think one of the things that as we got older, um, we started, I think it was with Reverend Baker. We would have the Christmas fellowship, and it was like the second Sunday in December, and all of the ministry. So it would be done two different ways. Most recently, it was the birthday ministries. So you be the birthday club group, and they would throw down. It was like phenomenal. So then they all tried to they would out cook each other and out decorate their table, for the pastor's Christmas party. So that was a thing. And then also at that, it would give the kids their Christmas gifts. It was a nice celebration. But those meals were memorable. People be circle all these tables and all these people and all this food. Uh, that was at the high point a very memorable experience with people fellowshipping, eating food, eating way too much, uh, but in the beauty of celebrating the holidays, and then the pastor would be given his Christmas appreciation token at that time. Other than that, I'm trying to remember uh, dinners. Of course, I'm sure they had the teas that churches had. They were really beautiful and wonderful with these different activities. Um, but that was pretty much it that stands out. Um, really, I'm trying to remember, did we those kinds of programs, those holiday programs stand out at this point?
So I'm not going to ask you much about the building because you talked about that already. I was going to ask you like about the move from the past building to the West Chicago building, and the whole thing about the renovation, how that was the vision of Reverend Talley. But did you attend the grand opening service for the current location or the dedication service or?
I was only 12, 13, 11.
You have I mean, the stuff
I'm
you
trying to
telling me.
remember. Oh, let me think. I know it was a motorcade. Um, I remember when Reverend Talley burned the mortgage in the cornerstone of the church. Uh, I may not have been a part of that. I think it was such a happening, and it was a brocade. I probably not. Uh, but shortly, the dedication and all that, and the mayor and all these people, the governor, whoever else was there, I don't remember being a part of that. I don't remember. Mm-mm. Not of that. And I think the people that may have either gone on to glory for sure, because I would think that most of the people that are around at my age, we would probably be in the same crew. Like, okay, we were like how old at the time? And again, children were seen and not heard, and you weren't a part. It wasn't as inclusive and as it is now back in the 60s and the 70s, right? You had your place. Well, you don't know that because you didn't have your place. Your place is everywhere. But you're talking about 50, 60 years ago.
Hmm,
Mhm.
interesting. Okay, and
Yeah,
it
the
was a
different times. Hmm?
a huge thing. I got the newspaper clipping for that, and it's just this
Mhm.
picture of the audience and it's people packed. And just
Yes,
yes, it was. I'll send y'all that as well. It was a lot.
it was a
Uh,
lot because this having a motorcade, I said a motorcade. Really, they would, to come from the old church to the new church in a motorcade procession, like, whoa. Yeah, it
Couldn't
was
that like
something.
couldn't that like cause traffic at all?
And I'm sure it did. All of that and some. I'm trying to figure out where did everybody park anyway.
Right. I want to know
They
the
didn't-
logistics of this whole
yeah,
day. I
I'm
want to
trying.
know.
Well, it's very interesting you brought that up because I'm telling you, we parked on Grand River, across Grand River, all over. It was crazy. Now, we didn't have to worry about cars being broken into as much. And so cars were parked everywhere, all over. You had to walk. You parked and you had to walk in the neighborhood to walk to the church. It was weird. That's nothing. That's why I went to Sunday school, because I always had a place. You know.
Okay, so just a few more questions, and I promise I'll let you go. Um, were there churches that split from New Light?
Oh my God. The number of churches that have been a split. Woo, goodness. Um, Christ Cathedral, I think was a split. I know that was a split. Let me think. Christ Cathedral. A lot of people went to other churches, with for the various some went to yeah, did they really was that really a split or they went to New Liberty, then a lot of people would go as a group to other churches. I don't know if that's really a split, right? A split is when you start a new church.
Yeah, but
No, I don't know what a split
no,
is.
no, that's right, that's correct. But I would say people leaving in groups to go to other churches would still count as a split too.
Oh,
That's what I
well,
would say.
yeah, then
But
they're home.
the true definition of that is yes, when they split and found a new church. Yes, that's like the yeah.
Well, yeah, because Reverend Baker did a split, his church, when he left, and people went with him. Uh, I forgot the name of it, but you'll figure it out. You know what it is. So that's a split. When he came, Christ Cathedral, those folks went, the ones that you're talking about, that article started a church. And then when he left, he started a church, Abundant Life Ministries or something like that. Okay. And then everybody else kind of went as a group. Some went to Tabernacle, some went to Hartford. Um, I forgot there's another one. I can't think of it. The gentleman that if you're interested in finding out more about the choir, his group went to that church that he's at now. Um, Let me think. Oh well, yes, some went to, oh shoot, the church on Grand River. Yeah, we have really helped a lot of churches. Uh, a lot, a lot. Yeah. Whether it's a split of people left in groups. Yeah. And that's where we are now. That's and that's why we are now. Plus the, leadership, lack thereof, and all that. You made me think about that. That's an interesting thing. Do you need a number? I'm trying to think.
No, but
You know,
have you ever heard the saying? I think it was Clayton Adam Powell that
Clayton Adam Powell.
um
Adam Clayton
yeah,
Powell.
yeah. He said that the Baptist church multiplies by division. So, it's a common thing. It's Second Baptist Church in Detroit, out of 30 churches came out of Second Baptist, and it just keeps
Mhm.
sprouting out. So it's a thing. So it's interesting that you said that. I didn't realize, you know,
Mhm.
that many have come out of New Light. And so like, what do you
Mhm.
think led to the decline in membership and youth involvement in New Light?
Hmm. Leadership, the leadership, pastoral leadership in particular. I think that's huge. It's in anything, because just as Reverend Talley became creative and innovative, he innovated, he created, he saw, these things happen. They don't happen like quick, fast, in a hurry. You see this, you see, what do you do about what you see? And that doesn't come from uh not necessarily from the congregation. They're there to help, but as the visionary, as the leader, and you can see because you're coming looking at from the pulpit what is going on here. Let's talk about this. What do we need to do? Where do we need to do? Do we need to get another Sunday school bus? Do we? Because we did have we did pick up people in New Light. What's going on? Are people moving? What is happening? Why aren't the youth here? Are we going out, pressing the flesh, going out and talking to the people in the community, going to having group? None of that happened. To find out, you just kept it going. It's the same people doing the same thing. They might have done something different if somebody said, we need to do something differently. What can we do? Should we go see what other people are doing to hold on? I mean, we all in a, you know, what's happening over here and there. Um, and giving some shall we say, wise counsel on what we can do. You can see it. You can look at the numbers. You can look at the financing. How can what should we do differently? Are we in this, what can be done? Is there other streams that we might look at? I know at one time there was a discussion about maybe doing a child care facility in the building. Had done some looking about that. The problem with that, of course, is the facility would have had to have a lot of renovations. Now, I will say what I know now is things have been relaxed a bit. There's some things you can do, but that structure would have had to do a renovation. Should we have spent money to do some renovations to have another stream in, have a daycare center? That might have been a visionary move, right? To do some renovation if you could. Uh, Maybe the bank annex could have been turned into a daycare. You understand? But where was the leadership to let's go see what can we do? Let's talk to others. Let's talk to the council. I don't think there was a lot of uh, collaboration or collegiality with other ministers. I don't, there wasn't, I'm positive. And so I think that might have been a thought if we had looked at some things, because we did have the annex. It might have been a good child care facility with some modifications,
Mhm.
you know? So,
Two more questions. So what do you want people to remember about New Light 50 years from now?
hmm, I think what I would like them to remember is that when I think about the new generation church or the new church, it started, it didn't evolve to where it is now. It started in the traditional. Now, and remembering for the time how the traditional Baptist church served its people and what it meant to people from all aspects. It was a place for people to belong. It was a place for blue collar people to feel empowered and to be recognized where maybe they would not have been recognized in other settings, not at the job, but at church. You had uh, status and position, and in most cases, you wore it well with respect and dedication. Uh, for young people, an opportunity in a safe, caring, nurturing environment to grow and to be supported. That's okay, baby. You all right. Take your time, take your time. You can do it. You can do it. All that encouragement and support that traditional Baptist church did offer young people. And many of them soared because of that experience, whether it's knowing how to speak, how to interact intergenerationally, because you had to. Okay, wear your manners, put a handle on, and all of those things that later in life. So I would, now you can capture how whatever I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, but I think you got it. It was a place. It was a place that grew and enriched the lives of people. Other thing I'm thinking about, it also s- allowed people to share their talent, whether it was singing or whatever they were, drama, to plays at church, to Sunday school speeches, to interpret them, the dance. You may not have been on the dance team at school, but you could show dance at church. Or you couldn't sing in the school choir, but you baby, come on, you can sing. Because we're gonna love you anyway. Make a joyful noise. Nobody don't care, you know. So I don't know how you would, I don't know how you can craft it and shape it and chat GPT it, but basically, that's what it was. And I know you could think about, I have my son and my daughter and people that I think I know it made a big difference in their life. Another thing, I was a single mother for a large part of the time. And so these people in this church just what, made certain that they were taken care of. Not so much financially, I was okay with that, but giving them wise counsel, respecting them, making them feel special, making them feel important, all of that. I think I'm sure that had a lot to do with who they are and other young people that grew up at that time. You know, Another person you talk about, Janie Allen. Janie Allen, women, I think every child that went to Sunday school, yeah, could tell you Janie Allen was their Sunday school teacher. Been there all that time, and all these grown people that was their Sunday school teacher love her. Again, that Sunday school connection. I'm still trying to remember my Sunday school teacher's name, but I'm gonna get it before too long. Because Sunday school offered that opportunity for kids to come, not be judgmental, sit in a group, read or not read, but they would just come every Sunday and just kind of be there. hmm Acceptance. Did I answer your question?
You did. You did beautifully, yes.
Mhm.
The last question is there anything else you feel that is important for me to understand about New Light's story or its
Mm.
legacy?
Mm. I would say the New Light story is not over. I'm gonna be honest. I thought that with all the what was happening around us, oftentimes why people say to me, "Are you still at New Light?" I've been saying that for about. Are you still at New? That's because how can you still be there? Are you still there? Yes, because so many people have left. And I would say it's not over yet. I would say that who we are, God's people, and the fact that with all that has transpired, we are still here. We may be a remnant, but I think there's something to be said about that. Now, we could be foolhardy, we could be foolish. I don't think so, because I think if there was not going to be more to come, it would have ended. And the mere fact that those pews are still yellow and the nameplates are still on them and the dome is still there, I think there's still a place for it. I think still a place. I think it's going to exist. I think whether, hopefully, more than this and in our hearts, but coming to another level for another time for a new group. We held it all this time since 70, whatever it was. So what's next? You know, I think it has good bones. I think my prayer is that with Reverend Nicholson, this will turn around and it'll be his time to be the visionary leader as Reverend Talley was. Because I don't know how many young people would have come in there looking at what in some people say, I don't know. I don't know about this. Only 10 people here, or five or six, or what have you, right? Um, it's New Light is going to survive and it's going to thrive. Um, will it take time? Probably. However, I believe it's going to continue to be the church that it has always been, but even greater. I do. hmm That's my thought. Now, what else do I need to do? What else do you need from me?
Nothing really. That was
You
amazing. We're
better
gonna
ace
do.
that paper.
I hope I do. I hope I do. We've been talking for almost 2 hours, and
I
you've given
know.
so
I
much
know.
good insight. That was amazing how
I
you
want to,
answered.
will I have a chance to read your paper? Now, is this going to be
Yeah.
one of many or what?
One of many, you said. I
Is
could
this going to be one
potentially,
of many papers
I
that
could
you're
do,
going to do?
I could do a couple of papers on New Light, yeah. But of course, you can see the one that I'm getting ready to do. I wrote the introduction for it. I started off by saying how there's this pastor, he's deconstructed pastor, which means that he's no longer a pastor, he's no longer in the Christian faith, and he's saying that all the black church has never been a pillar of the black community. It's never. You can do research on it
Yeah.
yourself. And so I take that argument that he says, and I said, you know what? When you take his advice, you can actually see that he contradicts himself. That that it is a pillar of the black community, and it has been. So that's how I started off. And then I go into saying, as an example, I'm doing a case study on New Light Baptist. And then I'm going to use the insights that you gave me plus the newspaper clippings. The stuff from Michigan Chronicle, the
Right,
Detroit
right.
Tribune, all
Mm,
of that. And it will be
mm,
used to argue against that argument, plus answer some other questions. So, yeah, you all get a chance to read it if you would like, and I'll give
mm.
you all the
I
research
wonder
as
what
well.
made him say that. That's so interesting to me. Has he ever been in was he a product of the black church?
Yeah, he's a black pastor, former black pastor.
Oh,
But the thing is, the other thing, the underlying thing I'm trying to argue in my paper too
right.
is that um people in my generation echo his statements. Like people in the comments are just like, "Oh my goodness, you're right, you're right. I always felt this way." On
Mm.
across platforms, across TikTok, Facebook, Instagram,
Really?
they're arguing this. They kind of agree with him, or they share similar arguments. So I'm trying to contradict that. It has been a pillar. It has helped us. The reason why where we are now is because of the Black church. So that's what I'm arguing in my paper, and I think New Light would be a perfect example of that to argue. So,
Mm.
and I've done papers like this for other churches. I don't know if you're familiar with Cathedral of Faith. I don't know if you ever heard of Reverend Herbert Hinkle. It was a
Hmm.
church in Inkster. Now they're in Detroit. And they also had something similar as New Light, a bus ministry where they would pick up kids from different cities and bring them to Sunday school. They had the nation's, at one point, largest
Hmm.
black Sunday school course with over, I want to say 3,000 people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember the numbers, but
Hmm.
yeah, I've done, a paper similar. But I want to do Greater Grace and I want to do Solomon's Temple. I really want to do something on King Solomon. I'm curious
Hmm.
about what is the not Russell Street, but definitely Greater Grace is next for
Greater
sure.
grace. Hmm. 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 Russell Street. Well, that would be the female minister.
Oh, Reverend D.D. Coleman, yep,
Diddy Coleman. Now we did a lot. When she first started out, she'd do a lot of Women's Day speaking. She was tough. I like Diddy Coleman.
Mm,
Yep, she was, yeah. Before she became a minister, right? She'd be at New Light. I think she was starting out,
mm,
you know.
mm,
I knew she was gonna be, you could tell early on.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember her for sure. Thank you for reminding me about Dee Dee Coleman. She did some real Women's Day. She'd be putting them on fire over there. She'd be putting us on
She
fire.
Pastor Emeritus now, but yeah,
Yeah.
I met her this year.
Did you?
She wrote a book too.
Oh, okay.
I think that was a while ago though.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was her and the lady from New Prospect. I forgot it. Was it Wilma Johnson, I think?
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Wilma Johnson. Oh my.
I heard, ooh, it was
Oh,
the
oh.
what was it? The Detroit Baptist pastors in the vicinity, they have for Black History Month, they've been honoring past trailblazers of like Detroit Black ministers. And so they have like either descendants or like mentees of these
Hmm.
ministers. They'll
Hmm.
have them read an excerpt from like one of their sermons. So
Oh,
they read
really?
Wilma Johnson's.
Oh,
I almost
really?
ran. I was like, "Whoa!"
Wilma Johnson. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
New Prospect.
When we were before the pastor that just left, we had when we had, whatever, when Pastor Baker left, we had, that was like 14, 15 years ago. We had people lined up to come and preach every Sunday and to do um a special, like services for us because we were without a pastor. Wilma Johnson came over there maybe a couple of times. But one of the sermons and I forget the scripture, and it was the main thing, you will live again. And I never forgot that.
Mm.
That's what she said to us when we were when that split was going on. You will live again. And then she went on. Yeah, she was something.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah. So here we are. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I would like to see. I'm just makes me interested that so many young people feel they don't know. I'm just wondering what what was their upbringing? What was the impact on the church to them? Were they in the church for them? Was it loving, nurturing, caring, supportive? I don't know.
And I think one of the things too that's leading to this decline in youth membership too is just not educating the youth on how impactful this was, how impactful the Black church
Right.
was. I think that would, because the Black church is our birthright. It's what our ancestors left for us, and I feel
Mhm.
like we would take on a new level of pride, a new level of wanting to restore these institutions and making sure that they're
Right.
still with us.
And
And
still be wise enough and figure out how to make them more, shall we say, adapt to the needs of the people
we are
that
the
they're going to
change we want to
serve.
see. And if we are sick and tired of whatever's happening in the church, we can change that. It's our time.
Right. It is.
But
It is. But you have to also respect the past and why. It's the why is it why, the why. There was a reason behind it. It may not exist now, but there was a reason behind. They were so rich when you dressed because for us as African American Black people, we know what people think of us as our first appearance. First time they look at you, they already get, in this world. That's a lasting impression. Yeah, you can come as you are. Yeah, that's cool. But what is the first impression? That still exists. I don't care. We have to code switch. They don't know oftentimes how important it is. Now, if you're gonna go in with your jeans with the rips and the fashionable and all that jazz, or you're gonna go to a meeting, or you're gonna go to an interview, how are you gonna look? You have to.
mhm,
And so that's where we got, remember the term, put on your church clothes,
mhm.
because you knew what that meant, you know.
Yeah, it's like New Light was just a church that intrigued me. It was always a church that I had seen, whether I was in Detroit for an event or something, we passed by it, or I'm doing research and I see it, and I'm just like, this giant auditorium full of all of these pews. You telling me that there was a point in that congregation's life that they needed that space? What led to that? Like, that's just how my mind operates as an aspiring
Right,
historian.
right.
Why purchase a building that big? What was it needed for? What happened during that time that led to that? So I question that with a
And
lot of.
you have to also think about demographics
Mm,
and people, we still lived in those communities,
mm,
but as soon as we were able to go to the burbs,
mm,
we left. Northwest Detroit, and then we went to Oak Park, and we went out. There was the neighborhood. We were a neighborhood church. People lived in those apartment buildings that are no longer existent, and people lived in those homes. And they were middle class homes. People had good jobs in those homes. Blue collar people lived in those homes. And once they were able to leave and go other, and then here we come with the renters and the people that didn't have so much. I know one of the things that happened, Section 8, just all kinds of things happened. Section 8, at one time you had to live in Detroit, whatever, but then you take your Section 8 and go to a suburban area to live. Okay, what happened? People left. The
mm,
flight.
mm.
People not in the community. You living out in Southfield Farm, are you gonna drive all the way back to 5240? Really?
Or you got to pass churches on the way there, and then that
All the
may,
way. I mean, there's
yeah.
one around the corner. I might as well just, why am I, especially if there's, the zeal behind it. Your kids are older, whatever. You're
Mhm.
getting older. Do you want to drive that far? It's a lot of issues. But we did have people from the community. The community doesn't exist anymore over there. They're not living there. They've gone. School age children. We had Northwestern, McKenzie, all those schools, that kids went to that lived in those communities.
Huh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons. It's a lot of demographical reasons as well.
So complex. Ugh.
It's perplexed. Um, I remember there would be stores on Grand River, Mayfair, grocery stores. We had the Salvation Army behind us that had a recreation center. That's the parking lot now. They used to could
Oh,
go over there
wow.
and yeah, that would be our gym. The kids could go over there and do gym or at the Salvation Army, the place behind us. Yeah, it was a Salvation Army, it had a rec area. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had it all right there.
Huh.
And we had relationships with, that entity. The kids go play basketball and stuff like that.
Do you think that that was intentional? The how things, external stuff was created so that it could break up communities, or do you think it just happened by chance?
Hmm. I think part of what I believe happened is a lot of those communities were called older communities. And then when the older people either died or their children came, they either didn't take care of the property or they went into, it wasn't kept and people left and nobody could inhabit it,
Mm,
inhabit those places. Because I
mm.
know a lot of what's the old West Side community,
Oh, that
not
is.
Northwest, not, going that way north. And I think that had a lot to do with it because a number of the people in New Light lived in that older West Side community on those streets, and they were able to get to church in less than 5 minutes,
Mm,
you
yeah,
know.
I go over there now and I'm just like, oh, everything's abandoned, falling apart. The churches are the main things that are still operating though, the buildings. I think Saint Cyprian is closed though. They closed in
Hmm.
2021.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
one. And then we're Hartford, that's New Ebenezer Baptist. St. Stephen is the only one that like really stayed.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, because they've kind of done some renovations over there, right?
Yeah, they had it's the main sanctuary, and then they built the Spivey Center in the 50s, and then they had
Right.
a little small addition in the 90s. So yeah, they just kept instead of moving out, they just kept building because they had the space. I'm sure
Right.
Hartford
Right.
was like landlocked, Tabernacle,
Yeah.
same
Yeah. They don't
thing.
land like, right. We
Yeah.
didn't have the
So it
space.
just makes sense to just leave.
Mm-hmm.
The St.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen has the land, but they're still up
Mm-hmm.
there. They're still thriving. I just helped them with their historical marker application, so they're going to get that soon. The historical, the green plaques outside.
Right. Right. Right.
I helped them with that application when it came to
Did
helping
they
with.
have to do something to do it? Did they have to do some renovations?
No,
Really?
a historical marker like the green plaque.
Mm-hmm.
No, not to my knowledge. No, it was an application, and you have to talk about what makes your church historical. Really, like their involvement with the NAACP, the connection to
Um,
Motown, the Temptations practice in the Spivey Center, and
oh, yeah, yeah,
all of that. So, and
yeah.
then the
Okay, that was
architects who
that.
designed it, a whole bunch of black architects designed it. So that's
Okay,
what
that
makes
was
it.
it, right? And it said, okay, I
New
got
Light
you.
needs a historical marker.
But I got to figure out what can we say to make it that?
Um,
Pick your brain.
it's musical history. Um, the nursing home. I mean, just it's. I mean, it's a lot of things that makes it historical. The musical
Oh,
legacy.
yeah, so that outreach, that would be the nursing home was our outreach
Right,
program.
right, right.
Right.
The clothing and all of that, and
Hmm.
just the first of all, the building itself is architecturally significant. even though,
Mhm.
the fourth scientist church built it. That
Mhm.
makes it architecturally significant and historical itself. Um,
I might have to piggyback with you on that one. You might have to help me do
I
that.
would love to help. I would love to help.
Well, I would love you to help. So whenever, so now after you do this paper, how many classes you have classes after this or what?
Yeah, I won't be done until 2027. I thought I was gonna be done next year because I had did the whole dual enrollment thing in high school, took 2 years off of college, but I
Yeah,
transferred.
right. You went to Cass. Where'd you go?
No, I wish. I went to Romulus High School.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I have dual enrollment too that takes,
Oh, that's
I
amazing because it takes the 2 years off and knocks out all
right.
the general education requirements, and all you have left to do is stuff for your major.
Hmm.
But since I transferred from University of Michigan Dearborn to University of Michigan Ann Arbor, they knocked me down a year.
Oh
So
wow.
I have an additional year. I was going to graduate next year, but nope,
Okay.
it'll be 2027. But
Okay, that's okay.
during that time, yeah, because I get more time to be a
To do
student.
what you need to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I
So
would like to help.
how do you go to Ann Arbor or you do online? How do you do it?
No, I go to the campus. I commute, but I'm
Mm.
trying to stay on campus next semester. I just
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
afford it this semester.
Right, right. My daughter graduated from U of M.
Nice. Go blue. Go blue.
Go blue,
Yes.
right. In engineering.
Yep, I'm
Mhm.
African American Studies. I'm a history major.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I will see you on PBS on a documentary about black churches. Someone
That
did
would
one.
be a dream. That would be amazing. I would love to do that, and I would love to produce my own stuff. Yeah, that's what I want my contribution to be for Black history. Is that when
Hmm.
people, when I pass on, they'll say he did his best to preserve Black church history. That's all I want.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm, making, yeah, that and black church music, gospel. I mean, there's so many things you could pull in from this because you're at a very interesting point where there's so much change, but then but you're looking at the hit past. It's like you're at a very pivotal place where you're looking at the past and looking at the future at the same time. So if you want to know any more about choirs, let me know. I know
Okay.
somebody to call for that. If you when you want to get into that, you got to go before people getting old now, so you got to watch it.
Time is of the essence. I was gonna do oral history for this one church, and she passed away before I had the chance to. So I get it. I get it. Time is of the essence. Oh, yeah, I'm curious about Warren Avenue and Tridestone Baptist Church. Those are some other churches I'm curious about.
Yeah, well, it's so funny you mentioned Tridestone because that's the neighborhood I grew up in.
Oh wow.
Virginia Park and
Yeah.
Hamilton and there, and that was over there. Uh,
Reverend Terrell. Oh, I'm so
yeah,
curious about that. So curious.
yeah,
It's
there's a
hard to
lot going on.
find. It's a
There's
hard to find people who went there because it's disbanded now. But
yeah, they've been disbanded a long time, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I remember that was when I grew up. Tri-Stone was right over there.
Mhm.
But again, people kind of went to their church. They
Yeah.
didn't do a lot of visiting and going here and
That's
there.
interesting that you say.
Interesting.
Me personally, Lord forgive me. I be church hopping. I go everywhere. Just because me
So
being
where's your
me.
home church?
New Birth Baptist Church in Inkster.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you go all over. So they
Not as
said,
I mean, when I was younger and stuff like that, of course I sang in the youth choir and served as a graphic design minister,
right.
yada
Oh,
yada. But as I got my car and I got curious and seeing other churches and stuff, I just do that. Every like once a month or twice a month, I go to other churches.
oh, so you
Especially
have a list of where you're going. You
Oh,
just have,
absolutely. Yeah, they're like I've been curious about this church forever. Like, I want to go there. So that's literally what I do. Especially like, some of my relatives they go to other churches too.
Mhm.
Greater Emmanuel Church of God in Christ, Bishop
Mhm.
Sheard, my sister's a member
Mhm.
there. I
Mhm.
love that church. So I go with her often. So,
Right, right,
yeah,
right.
that's just what I do. I church hop. So, I'm not
Okay.
ashamed of it, but I just do it.
I know. And that's un shall we say, with no qualms. That's a good thing. That allows you the freedom. That's great. Don't be like me. I only go to one church all my life. Okay. Except on high holy days. Right. Okay. Well. hopefully things work out. Let me know how it goes for you.